Okay, now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to do this show. 2 minutes ago, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to do this show. And now I'm ready to do this show. So, how is everybody doing tonight? This is, of course, Unfound Live for March 10th, 2025. I hope everybody's had a great week since we all last got together. I have a fantastic show lined up for you tonight, as you can probably already tell by the headlines. In the headline, we can see Flight 370. Got to talk about it since it's now been 11 years since that jet went missing and with the people on it. And I also want to talk about Gene Hackman, what has been revealed. And I think there is at least a little bit that we can apply from his death, his wife's death, to disappearances. I want to talk about that tonight. And finally, is that the right word? Finally, we have some Unfound updates. And as you know, the last couple of update episodes going back to August and then more recently to December, those update episodes, they still ended up being like an hour and a half or almost 2 hours long, but really compared to some others, they were short. And I made the comment back then that at some point this has to bounce back. And maybe we are seeing that bounce back with not maybe the podcast. Disappearance is covered on the podcast, but with some Unfound Nows that I'm going to go through tonight. Some updates on some Unfound Now disappearances. But I have a lot of other stuff. There will be no problem filling up the 2 hours tonight. But over the next 2 hours, at some point, in fact, you should just do it right now. Please like this video. Hit the thumbs up, whatever kind of device you're using. That would be appreciated. And share this video. Tell everybody about it. Tell everybody about the live show that occurs here every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Pretty much always on time. Unless I've moved it maybe once in a while here and there. But it's going to be maybe 3 years this summer that we've been doing Mondays. Remember, it used to be on Wednesdays. And if you'd like to support what we do here at Unfound, you can see it on the screen, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You get some stuff for signing up there. You can also contribute at paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. You can, while you're watching or just listening tonight, you can hit the chat or the super chat button, which is not on everybody's device, unfortunately, depending on the application. But you can hit the green button below the chat, and you can contribute that way monetarily. And then also you can become a member of the YouTube channel. And by hitting the join button below the screen. And of course, if you're watching on Facebook, you can also watch this on Facebook these days. You have to go over to YouTube to do that. So there's multitude of ways to support what we do here at Unfound, and it is all appreciated no matter the level of support. As for what has been going on with me since we all got together last, maybe most importantly, I know at least some of you, maybe this is foremost in your mind when it comes to me as a person. You're wondering about my sleeping. Of course, there have been some live shows in the last couple of months where I've devoted quite a bit of the beginning time of these live shows to what I've been struggling with for a few months. And I'm happy to say that this past week was the best week of sleep yet. And I getting fairly close to the way I used to sleep back, I guess, going back to the middle of November, when things, I would say, were still pretty regular, and then everything went to crap at the end of November. And I am going to continue to have, I had my sleep therapist appointment this morning at 8 a.m. sharp. And I think that was session number 9. I think she and I have agreed that we're going to do a total of 12. So with 3 more sessions to go with her, but we're going to kind of space it out. I've been seeing her every week, but we're going to push this one to next Wednesday for it's like a week and a half, I guess. And then we'll see what we do after that. But as far as the next one, but I have 3 more to go with her. And like I said, my sleep has gotten better every week. And in fact, I would say in some ways, I'm sleeping better than I did in November, which I know it's even when I say it, it's even crazy to me. And of course, this is going to continue to be an ongoing thing. I get the idea that, once you go through something like this, you always have to be kind of vigilant. I think that this is very much like if you're an alcoholic and you can't drink alcohol anymore, and you have to remain vigilant. Yes, your life's going great and you're following the rules and everything else. But this to me right now, here in March of 2025, feels a little bit like that you don't want to take anything for granted. You want to continue to do things the right way. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. I have no problems with that. And in fact, I think that regarding the last 3 months of following this plan, that I've been very disciplined, as disciplined, I think, as a human can be. And I think that it has paid off, culminating in this past week where I have probably averaged, I might have averaged over 7 hours of sleep a night, and with only spending maybe a total, 8 hours in bed. It's one of those things, if you don't understand this, when you start talking about insomnia and problem sleeping, it's not that people can't sleep. It's not necessarily that. What it really is that to get an adequate amount of sleep, they have to spend a lot of time in bed. Meaning, they say the average human, you got to have like 7 hours, although I think maybe for some people that's overrated. And there are people that get along having 5 hours a night and do just fine. But the problem is that to get those, let's, say 7 hours, they have to be in bed for like 10 or 11 hours, which of course, if you're trying to have a life and you have a job and you have a family and everything, it's pretty much impossible. And then that's how, so you can't spend that much time in bed. You can only spend 7 hours in bed, but you're not sleeping for those 7 hours. You're only sleeping 4 hours. You're only sleeping 5 hours. So with the plan that I've been on, as many of you now know, cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia, what it really is doing is teaching you to get your required amount of sleep in the lowest amount of time possible. So if you need 7 hours of sleep, it's trying to get you to a point where you're getting those 7 hours in like 8 hours of time in bed. And it's something they call sleep efficiency. You take the amount of sleep you got and then divide it by the number of hours you were actually in bed. And what you're looking for there is something at least above 80%. So, for example, if you're in bed for 8 hours and you get 7 hours, that's 7 divided by 8. And that ends up being like 87%, which is pretty good. Which I would say that's probably what I've been doing over the past week. probably somewhere in there. And so this is what I've been working on. And that's, like I said, it's something for everybody eventually is going to fall asleep. You can't live without sleep. And even people, maybe if they're up all night, like I was a couple nights going way back to November, where you didn't sleep at all, eventually your body will sleep. You'll just collapse. You need sleep. But what you're looking to avoid is you're looking to avoid that. You're trying to space it out. And really, insomnia or getting to a good point of sleep is not about necessarily learning to sleep again. Your body knows how to sleep. And it may, you may have medical issues, pain issues, anxiety issues, but even people with that stuff, eventually they fall asleep. The brain shuts off. For most people, though, that have sleep issues, it maybe has some anxiety issues, but it's really that. And a lot of times they may be worrying about things, thinking about things that really might not be as important as they seem. Maybe they're blown out of proportion. And that was certainly else something that I've been working on over the last 3 months. So what I've been doing is working on getting enough sleep in the fewest amount of hours possible. So going back to when I was talking about, well, I'm only allowed to be in bed for 6 hours. I'm allowed to go to bed at midnight, but I have to get out of bed at 6. How much sleep can you get in those 6 hours? And if we move it to 6.5 hours, you move it to 7 hours. How much sleep can you get in that amount of time? And so these days, I'm not even keeping track on my phone. I'm not doing the online chart. So this is where I am now. And this week has gone pretty well. Still had one night where I was up for like an hour. Still ended up getting over 7 hours of sleep. Maybe not quite that. But I was probably in bed, the whole total time was 8 hours, but I still probably got 6 hours and 45 minutes of sleep or something, even though I was up for an hour in the middle of the night. Now, most of the other nights, it wasn't like that. So it's an ongoing process, but sleep has been good. But like I said, I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to take it for granted. And the good news is that I'm going to sleep fairly fast, and I have those tools to sleep. And the most important thing is, if I'm not sleeping right away or something, not freaking out about it. That's the other thing for all of you. You go to bed, I'm not falling asleep. The worst thing you can do is freak out about it and try to push it and everything else. In fact, the best thing you can do is just get out of bed. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I've learned. If you can't sleep, if you go to bed, you're there 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you haven't fallen asleep, the best thing you can do is get out of bed, go walk around, go back into another room, turn the TV on and stuff like that. That'll be better than trying to force yourself to sleep in bed. That's my lesson for tonight. So I'll move on to other things. So I'm good. I feel as rested as I have felt. And like I said, in some ways, I think I'm sleeping better than I did back then. Because I think what was going on is, yes, I was getting sleep. I was getting enough sleep, but I was spending too much time in bed. I now know, I can see that now. Not obvious then, obvious now. And when you start to feel that way, like, man, I'm sleeping in, I got 7 hours of sleep, but I spent 10 hours in bed, that is a recipe for insomnia. That's only going to make your sleep and everything worse. Think about getting efficient sleep, getting whatever hours you think you need in just a little bit time long enough. You think you need 7 hours? Work on getting 7 hours of sleep, but only being in bed for 7.5 hours. If you only need 6 hours, 6.5 hours in sleep. If you really need 8 hours, 8.5 hours in bed. That is going to keep you from ever becoming an insomniac. There you go. All right, moving on to some other things. This past week, as good as the sleep was, trivia was the good and bad this week. Last Wednesday, my team blew it, and we got 0 points, and we're in second place now. But unless the first place team, I mean, it's not impossible, but unless the first place team really makes a big mistake or something, we're once again going to come in second place. Completely blew it. Bet all of our points on the final question, missed it. They got it right and doubled their points. We got 0 points, and that's all it took. In contrast, on Thursday night, I once again went out by myself and played trivia, and once again won by myself. Now, I will say there were only like 3 other teams, and I would say the competition was not that strong. But still, I just randomly showed up somewhere where they hold trivia, and I won. So that's like me winning twice by myself in the last 2 weeks. I told you, I'm a smart guy. Never doubt me on that. But the big issue, though, right now with my team is that we're losing my brother and his wife because they're moving. So the future of our team could be in question. Do we have enough people that reliably show up? Because over the past 2 years, we've lost 1, 2, 3. Now it's going to be 4, 5. We're going to have lost 5 members of our team in the last 2 years. Moving, all of them moving away. So, it's been a long run. We've been like a team since 2013 or something crazy like that, like 12 years. So maybe it's still, come on, 12 years. I was 42 when they're 41, 42, 43 when the team started. Now I'm 54. All good things must come to an end. So we'll just have to see what everybody's commitment is going to be. The most reliable, committed people are usually myself, my brother, his wife, and this guy, Scott. Well, my brother and his wife are moving. So really the most reliable people are me and Scott, the 2 of us. And I don't want to show up if I don't think we can, win and everything. So I will keep you posted on that. In other news, for the first time, I took a drive on Saturday night. I drove the whole way down. It was at night. I drove the whole way down on Gulf Boulevard, the road that's right out here, the whole way down to the southern tip of Pinellas. This is the first time I've done this since the hurricanes, way back in October. Now, granted, even at night, I could tell that area still has a long way to go. And in fact, some of you who have been around long enough to, follow Unfound and even this live show, you can remember where I used to live in Madeira Beach. I went by where I used to live right there on 140th Avenue in Madeira Beach. And there's certainly no one living in that place where I used to live. And there was actually a board up on one of the windows, which would have been unthinkable. So it tells me that the building, like I said, they had like 4 feet of water in that building, I think, back then. And so I don't know. I have not talked to my old, I should text her, my old landlord, Terry, to see what's going on. But down that way, you could still see sand in places. I saw piles of junk in places. Even at night, I could see this. And like I said, I went the whole way down. I went the whole way down to what they call Paso Grill. The whole way down to the tip. A lot of dark buildings. A lot of places have like fences around them because they're condemned or whatever else. Very sad. In fact, we have this right down the street. There are 2 short-term rental or condo or hotels just south of me. 2 of them both have fences around them. They're condemned from the hurricanes. It's just right down the street. It's even more obvious at the southern end of the county. And like I said, I could even tell that at night. Very sad. Just no good, bad. It's gonna take a long time. Even though, it's been, and there are a lot of people who haven't gotten building permits yet, people with houses and everything else. I don't know how long it's going to take. And of course, the weather doesn't stop. We could get hurricanes again this year. And it's very sad. Very sad. I think, you live up this way, you can kind of tell yourself that things are back to normal, but they really aren't. But if you're down in the southern end of Pinellas where they got hit harder, I think during the day, there's no way you can convince yourself that things are, you can kid yourself that things are back to normal. There's no way. You can do that up here, even though it's not down there. I don't think you can. I think there's still too much devastation down there. I think it's the way it's going to be. Very sad. And then finally, I hope everybody remembered to move their clocks ahead. What was weird for me, and then going back to my sleep for just a moment, of course, we moved the clocks up. And the funny thing is, move them ahead Saturday night. So, midnight automatically becomes 1 a.m. Of course, 11 o'clock p.m. becomes midnight. And it'll be that way until when? October, November. Now, it's funny for me, being that I've been on this sleep schedule for so long, is that I've been going roughly to bed about midnight and getting up between like 7, around 8 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning, somewhere like that, these last couple of weeks, and especially this past week. The funny thing is, last night, my body still wanted to go to bed at what the clock said, even though that would be off from the night before. Of course, 12 o'clock last night would be 11 o'clock on Saturday night. And still, so my body is more in tune with the actual clocks, I guess, than it is like with my circadian rhythm or something. It's really weird because I was thinking, well, we moved the clocks ahead an hour. That probably means that what? How would that figure out? That I'm going to want to go to bed at, so 10 becomes 11, 11 becomes 12, 12 becomes 1. That I'm not, I'm probably not going to want to go to bed till 1 in the morning. Nope. The clock said midnight. My body wanted to go to bed at midnight, even though that would have been 11 o'clock just 24 hours before. It's really weird. I don't know. But I hope everybody, if you're going to mess up, this is the bad time to mess up. Of course, in the fall, when you turn them back, if you forget to do it, it's really no big deal. This time of year, if you forget to turn your clocks forward, of course, you might, if you have plans, you go to church or something on Sunday mornings, you're going to be an hour late. In fact, I can't even tell you how many times I can remember as a kid, me and my mom and dad forgetting to move the clocks forward, and we missed going to church. And some of those times would actually be for Easter, and when we like Easter Sunday and stuff, I was raised Catholic. I can't tell you how many times that happened. It's kind of funny. All right, let's see. I haven't even seen who is in here yet tonight. Let's say hi. I'll finally say hi to everybody. Hello, Charlie. What's going on? Everything. What's going on? Yeah, Charlie's first. Deborah, Katie J. What's going on? Good to see you. I'm glad you're catching it live. Amy, Mary Jane. Good to see you tonight. Pleasure seeing you in the think tank last night. Neighborly, Heather, Kathy, D. What's going on? Stephanie, Lisa. Lisa had a birthday yesterday. Everybody. Sarah. Good to see you. Maureen. And Maureen, you're on time. Michelle, hello. What's going on? I am sleeping better, as I was talking about. Michelle, thank you. DD with the Wonder Woman picture. Stephanie says, my insomnia is something I have to take into consideration. I've had it for years, and time it just became habit to manage it. Yeah, you got to do that, Stephanie. So it's like a bad habit, and then your sleep pattern got wonky. I think so, Maureen. I think the studies have been done, Maureen. It's very clear that if you work from home, if you have kind of job that you make your own hours, those types of people are much more likely to eventually suffer from insomnia, in contrast to people that work out of the home. It's a very set schedule, maybe like a teacher, always at, school at a certain time, leave at a certain time, Monday through Friday. There are a lot of other things that factor into that. Your own health, stress, everything. But as far as lifestyles go and work, people who work from themselves, flexible hours, or it's kind of unpredictable. Maybe hours that you may work during the day, one, and then the night, the next one. Those people much more likely to eventually suffer insomnia. They develop these bad sleeping habits. So you can see, that's exactly me. Yeah, Kathy, you're right. Did they say? I was just talking about that. Great minds think of it like Lisa. No, I guess it didn't. My body still wants to go to bed at midnight, even though the clock, what it says, 12 on the clock, it's the same thing. Thank you, Mary Jane. Maureen. Yes, I've had struggles. My counselor asked me when it started, and I thought for a minute, I realized when my mom passed away in the Butler Hospital, felt like was an orphan of the earth. Yeah, stress things. Yeah, that's where my mother died too, Maureen. Hello, Karen. What's going on? I think it's 1:59 turns to 3 a.m. I got you. I know. Yes, that's exactly right. But I was talking about Sunday into Monday. And that's right. Darlene, destructive, and it takes a long time to recover. Yep. And the next hurricane could just be 6 months away. Arizona does not change times. I learned that living in Nevada, and I always had to figure out if I was going for work down into Arizona, what time was it going to be down there? Of course, during the summer, Nevada and Arizona, same time zone. In the winter, Arizona is an hour ahead. Darlene says an hour late for church yesterday. I think God will forgive you, Darlene. I think so. And Joanne, what's going on? Good to see you. Lisa says the best part of her birthday was getting a happy birthday to me. Boy, you really know how to suck up to the host, Lisa. So there you go. That's everybody, what everybody's had to say so far in the chat tonight. All right, let's get to the items on the agenda. And I'm going to do the ones in the headlines first because I want to make sure I get to all of them. They are certainly important. Let's start with Flight 370. Originally, you should know that this was a fairly popular episode when it came out in 2017. I think that we revisited it a few years ago. The original interview was with Jeff Wise, a guy who I still talk to. And in fact, all of you should be listening to his show on YouTube. He's doing great work there. I realize that there are other YouTube channels out there that devote themselves to Flight 370 to get a lot more listeners. But I have to be honest, I think they're all crap. They're conspiracy sites and about UFOs and everything else. Jeff is doing good, solid work. You can disagree with him, but nobody can argue that he is going about this, and I think in a professional way, a scientific way, and a non-conspiratorial, non-conspiracy, although once again, as I've acknowledged, his particular favorite theory is unique, but I wouldn't say that there are any facts to dispute it. But regarding Flight 370, being that we just passed the 11-year anniversary, and it seems like yesterday, you should know that just within the last couple months, another ship did go out there, did a little poking around, put some remote vehicles with sonar and side scanning sonar, whatever they call it, into the water in a few particular areas that in retrospect, they thought maybe they needed to check again. Maybe, for example, maybe they thought the clarity of the scan, the original scans were not good enough. And so they went back to these particular spots. Well, they've done that, and still nothing connected to Flight 370 has been found. And they did these scans, and then they went in over to Australia to change crews or something like that. And they are sailing back out in that direction to the area that they've used. I'm not here to get into the science tonight, but all the handshakes and everything the computers were doing with the satellite, that this particular area in the Southern Indian Ocean was decided as the best place to look. And we know a few years ago, they went out there, spent a ton of money and hours and everything, found nothing. Now, many of you have followed Flight 370. You know there have been parts of a jet that, washed up on the coast of Africa. And seemingly, they are from parts of Flight 370, but there's even doubt about that. And if you'd want of course, go to Jeff's channel. He talks about all the topics. He talks about everything regarding Flight 370. I would urge you to find his YouTube channel, Jeff Wise. And of course, he had the podcast that he was doing. It's just audio that you can find on Spotify, where he had a co-host. They were like talking back and forth. Well, he's now doing a show on his own. I would urge you to check all of it out and to get caught up. And then if you have Netflix, a couple years ago, there was a series that came out. What was it? 3 episodes regarding Flight 370 that you might want to check out as well. So they've done an additional search, not the big searches like they did a couple years ago, but a ship went out there, took a look around, and nothing has been found. So what to think? The reason I continue to respect Jeff Wise so much is because from very early on, maybe not the day it happened, but certainly within that year of 2014, when the disappearance occurred, that he started saying, I don't think they're going to find the jet in the Southern Indian Ocean. He was one of the few people, and I know regarding Jeff, if you forget his credentials, longtime aviation journalist. He is a pilot. If you watch any of the old Mayday episodes regarding plane crashes that were filmed years ago, you will find him on there being interviewed, being seen as an expert on aviation and aviation crashes. And it's so funny. Of course, these were filmed years ago. And, he looks like a little he looks like a little kid in them. And I think Jeff and I are close to the same age, and it probably could say that about me. If we go back 15 years, find me being filmed for something, I look like a little kid too. But it's just kind of funny. But, he's a well-respected person within the aviation community, and I think he's been doing high-quality work. I wish his work would get recognized by more people, and he's doing it the right way, but all the kooks seem to get more attention. But he continues to be correct. When everybody else pretty much within the aviation community who's respected, oh yeah, they're going to go down there. They're going to find they're going to find something on the floor of the Indian Ocean. And, we'll wrap this up pretty quickly. Jeff was like, nah, I don't know about that. kind of doubtful. He continues to be right. And, because people get so locked into their theories, these people, still haven't changed. Or it's going to be found in an area. Go search that area. It's not there. And let's remember something. I realize that it's the Indian Ocean. I realize it's one of the most remote parts of the world as far as being away from land and everything. But given the technology that they used to figure out where they thought that the jet went into the water was with a certain degree of accuracy, and the technology used to try to find anything at the bottom of the ocean, technology that has been used before to find other planes that have gone to the bottom of oceans or ships that have gone to the bottom of oceans, and that's all been successful. They're using the same equipment and haven't found anything. Still, there are people out there that insist that it's there. But I'm going to tell you, bringing this down to really what Unfound, the podcast, usually does, we're just looking at individual disappearances. And so when we're talking about people going missing and those circumstances where we don't think it was foul play, but we think that somebody did really walk off or run off or drive off due to mental illness or drugs or whatever else, and we think that they're probably in these woods here or there. Here's what I will tell you. Finding a jet on the bottom of the Indian Ocean with the technology that they're using is easier and more likely to be successful than sending a bunch of people out into the woods and trying to find a human body. We have to remember that. Because we know how many times groups have gone out into woods and missed remains, and then years later, a random hunter's out there and discovers remains right there in the area where they searched like 10 years before. We know this happens. Whereas when it comes to actually using side scanning sonar and all this high-tech equipment and everything that they've used, rarely, if ever, do those machines miss anything. If they go out and they think that a ship or a plane is in that particular area, they will find it. Now, granted, sometimes it's like a question mark, like with the Titanic. Even though there were many people who survived the Titanic, it was still like a question of, well, where exactly is it? Even though the Carpathia went and picked up all those people and could check the stars to see where they were and everything, it still took from 1912 until 1985 for the Titanic to be found. Of course, technology had to kind of catch up. But most, these days, when ships go down, they're usually found pretty quickly. Planes go into the water, they're found pretty quickly. It's something that all these experts insist, well, the plane's there. They go and look there, it's not there, and then they insist it's still there, even though they all know that the technology and everything they're using has a high degree of success. And if you're also familiar with Jeff, you know that his most popular theory is that the plane got hijacked and got taken and flown to Kazakhstan or even to Russia. And I realize, controversial theory. Where am I on this? I will tell you, nothing I'm saying here is I'm not speaking out of school. These are everything I've said here. I think that I've challenged Jeff on his thinking as much as anybody. And I think I've done it professionally. I've done it through email. And Jeff certainly knows that I have big time respect for him. But I've told him, I wonder if eventually it's going to end up that they're searching in the wrong area because the technology that they were using to figure out where it went, not the technology that's being used to search the water and the bottom of the Indian Ocean, but the technology that they used to figure out where they think it went into the water. I'm wondering if that science is as solid as the people have made it out to be. That's kind of where I am at this point. I'm not saying I disagree with Jeff regarding, this hijacking and everything. It sounds more to me like I'm guessing that it's conceivable, but I don't know how possible it is. It seems to me everything would have to absolutely go perfect for and everything else. And there would be no way to do a dry run. And as I've brought up to Jeff, even, when the United States military went and got or eventually killed Osama bin Laden, he was hiding out for all those years and then they figured out where he was. They figured out the big building that his compound is. They actually, I think, built, because that's what we do. They actually built a replica. Did I read this somewhere? A replica of the building, at least from the outside, to show, where they were going to land with these helicopters, what doors they were going to go in, and everything else. And they, SEAL Team 6. There was a movie, of course, made up about it. Zero Dark 30. As much as they practiced that, the highest professionals that you could ever have to do that, there was still a mistake. They still ended up wrecking a helicopter and having to leave it behind and blowing it up. Nobody got killed. No American military members got killed. But even though they drilled it over and over and over and over, they still lost a helicopter in the process of this plan. Of course, something they weren't planning to do. But even no matter all that practice, something still went wrong. Big time wrong. Luckily, nobody got killed. At least no Americans got killed. So when we start thinking about the hijacking of Flight 370, this also sounds like something, if you want to get away with it, you'd have to drill it over and over and over and over and again. The problem is there's no proof that anybody's ever done that. And there's no proof that you could, it's computer-wise, it's conceivable, to, get on a plane and then get down into the electronics bay and hack in. Certainly conceivable, but is any special forces group in the world ever really practiced that? Sounds pretty obscure and esoteric or something, whatever the word is. There's no proof like that was done. So seemingly if somebody or a small group, 2 or 3 people pulled this off, they never practiced it, but somehow showed up on that jet and were able to hijack it and have it be hidden for 11 years without any practice. That sounds unlikely to me. And I've told Jeff this. I've told him. So I think right now I come down like somewhere in between. I think I've convinced myself that the jet is on the bottom of the Indian Ocean. It was done. It's, the Occam's razor was simplest that the one pilot did do it for whatever reason. But the technology used to figure out where it actually hit the water is off because they were using data and a satellite and everything for things that they were never intended to be used for. Kind of reverse engineering things. And at some point, even though I'm certainly not the technical brain that these people are, it just sounds like there's a lot of wiggle room in this. And, it's, I don't know if it's one of those things where what's the saying, when all you have is a hammer, then everything becomes a nail. Kind of like that is like, all right, here's what we got, this technology, and we're just going to have to make it work. And I think that ends up leading to a lot of mistakes. So that's, I think, where I am. So I would not say I support Jeff And certainly, if it does end up being that, and yes, I've even asked Jeff just recently, well, if this was something where the jet did get hijacked and it got taken to Kazakhstan or Russia, and I'm not here to get into politics. Let's just say that Vladimir Putin was behind this and it was because of the original invasion into Crimea. Once again, I'm not getting into that. But was this hijacking like a distraction to keep everybody's looking over here? Meanwhile, Russia's, going into Crimea, has some cover because of the news and everything. It's kind of what Jeff has brought up. The idea then is, well, we're hoping, of course, whether no matter what you think about the state of the world and everything else, I think everybody wishes that Putin wasn't leading Russia. I think a lot of people around the world think that. And so I've even asked them, well, what happens if a more friendly regime comes to power in Russia? Do you think this might be like, Flight 007? Of course, if you remember going back to 1983, the Soviet Union shot down a 747 and they lied about it until the Soviet Union fell apart. And then it was finally revealed exactly what, happened. And it's clear that the Soviet Union pilot knew that it wasn't a passenger 747, shot it down anyway. And so could we have something like that? We have a regime change in Russia. It gets a little more friendly to the United States and everywhere else. Once again, I want to get into the politics of it. But, could it be that this might kind of go this way as well? It's something interesting to think about. So that's where I am on Flight 370. Certainly, what I would say the biggest mystery of the 21st century, happening at a time where I think anybody who knew anything about aviation in the world would think, well, surely a passenger jet could never just disappear. Now, granted, if you start looking into it, there have been many passenger jets or cargo jets that have disappeared. It's not necessarily, Flight 370 is not the only one that has ever happened. But when you start looking at those other ones, you have to go back several years, before, even before the internet and before jets started talking to satellites and things like that to really find passenger jets that were on established commercial routes that went missing for whatever reason. And so we were, at a point for at least a few decades out, planes can't be hijacked without knowing where they are anymore. And Flight 370 undermined all of that. It just blew that thinking right out of the water. It really did. So that's why I think that it is the greatest mystery of the 21st century. And in fact, we might have to, at some point, if this goes 30 years, if I'm on this earth for 30 more years, and at that point it would be 41 years that the plane hasn't been found, then we have to start putting it in the category of maybe one of the greatest mysteries of all time. Maybe. Considering. So, what is everybody saying here? Amy's saying, remind me in October about clocks. Okay, Amy, I'll put that on my to-do list. Darlene says, I think questioning the technology sounds totally reasonable. As I told Jeff once again recently, technology is not everything that it is made out to be. We even see that in disappearances. I think the general public thinks, oh, we're getting tracked. Our phones are tracking us. Our cars are keeping tabs on us. That's all true. But what we also know is when that technology needs to be used for investigation purposes, for search purposes and things, sometimes it's really accurate and sometimes it's not. It's not Law and Order. It's not CSI where all we need is it's going to, the square foot. That's not how it works. And because we've discovered this in Unfound over the last 8.5 years and some of these disappearances that have been featured, I then have to believe this is the way it is for the technology that is coming down from satellites to jets, and then, that goes up to the satellite, and then it goes to an office somewhere, to a computer bank somewhere. I then also have to start thinking, you know what? I bet that's kind of off too. And in fact, if any of you have the GPS application Waze, W-A-Z, I love it. I think it's fantastic. I use it, maybe not going around town here, but if I'm driving to Orlando or driving down to Sarasota, certainly when I'm driving to Pennsylvania to see my dad, I have it on. I have it on the whole way, even though I kind of know where I'm going, because it does tell you, there's a cop ahead. There's a car on the side of the road. Hey, there's going to be a slowdown and things. And so I always have it on. But any of you who have used it know sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes it will just send you off in a direction and you're like, what the hell is this thing doing? And in fact, there are stories out there where it's gotten people killed. It's gotten people lost. It's gotten people stuck. But 99.9999% of the time, it's accurate. But it's not 100% accurate. So that's also what I think about when I start thinking about where they're using this technology to find where this jet is. Well, sometimes Waze has problems getting me from here to Orlando, and all it is going surface streets to the 275 to the 4, and somehow Waze can mess that up. And I think Waze is the most respected GPS, route application in the world. So that, that's kind of where I am on this. There just seems to be wiggle room. And remember, all they would have to do regarding the searches in the Indian Ocean is be off by a few miles. Now, granted, they have a degree of certainty and it's a huge area but once you stop, you'd stop. The plane could be one more mile that way, but you don't go that one more mile, and so you don't find it. That's how this works. So, thank you for being an independent thinker. It's the way I've always been, Darlene. Thanks. Have you seen the alleged video of 370 being surrounded by the drones? I'm not even getting into that. Of course, no, it's crap. It's don't watch, don't listen to that stuff. Do not support those people. Darlene says someone is always behind the technology. Maybe not drones, but 0 point energy planned. Yeah. That must be it. Once again, I got no time for any of it. As Howard Beale, if you're familiar with, That's My Purse. If you're familiar with the movie Network, what does Howard Beale say? They'll tell you any SHIT you want to hear. They'll say anything to keep you, your eyeballs, your ears. They will say anything, to amuse you so they can get clicks and views. Don't do that. Don't do that. These people do not know what they're talking about. Okay. Don't listen to people. Don't watch people who don't know what the heck they're talking about. And you know how you know? Because as soon as these things are solved, these people act like they never said anything. They'll just move on to some other crazy theory. Once again, they're in the crazy business. They're not in the facts business. They're not in the truth business. They're in the crazy business. And it's important for all of you to be able to tell the difference, because they're more than happy to fill your mind with crap. They're more than happy to do that. Don't follow these people. Don't watch them. This could go for a lot of true crime stuff too. All right, moving on. Got to talk about Gene Hackman. Regarding this is one of the saddest stories you ever want to hear. I think maybe I think a lot of people have taken interest, maybe even people who, aren't into following the lives of famous people. I think everybody has heard about his and his wife's deaths. And because of a news conference a few days ago, we know how unusual, and I'm going to get to that, and tragic this all is. Now, if you don't know what it seems happened, and I don't know if anybody could have predicted this, I was thinking carbon monoxide poisoning. Not true. Not true. That did not happen. I don't think anybody could have predicted what happened. And it was this. Of course, Gene Hackman, 93 years old, had been out of the spotlight for a while, and now we know why. He'd been suffering from Alzheimer's, and his wife, who was about 30 years younger than he is, was taking care of him. And they had been married for a while. There were no allegations that there was a bad marriage. It seemed like they were a good couple. Like I said, the age difference, I don't know what to tell you. But she'd been taking care of them. They're living there in New Mexico. He has a huge house there. He was known locally. And I think when he was in better health and had his mind, he would be out. But he hadn't been in a movie for like 20 years, and he kind of retired, and he was doing painting and all of this. Now, it does seem, for whatever reason, that his children did not have a very close relationship. And I think the one daughter said she hadn't spoken to her father in a while. Well, maybe it's because he had Alzheimer's. I don't know. But, and that caught a lot of people's attention. They hadn't seen him in a while and everything. And it very well may be that Gene Hackman told his wife, I know I'm kind of losing my faculties here and everything. I don't want my kids to see me like this. Very possible. We don't know. But nobody had heard from his wife and he for a while. And somebody showed up and discovered his wife dead in a bathroom and Gene dead in what they call a mudroom, which I even had to look up what a mudroom was. And that's like the room, like when you come in from the outside where you take your shoes off and everything or hang your coat. I've never heard that as a mudroom before. News to me. But he was found dead right there. She was found dead in a bathroom, and there were pills there or something. And I forget, I didn't write the date down there, but she was seen on video doing some shopping one day, and it seems nobody heard from her or him after this particular day. Some people had sent her emails or called her or texted her, and she didn't respond to any of them. It was like later that day after she was seen on video shopping, or maybe the next day, very quickly. And so what they've discovered happened is this. His wife died of the hantavirus. Now, if you don't know what that is, people in the United States do die from it, but it's very rare. This is it is a virus that is carried by rodents, particularly in the southwest part of the United States, where they were Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, kind of really south California, Southern California, going out into the desert there, even Nevada. But in that area, this hantavirus, rodents carry it. And of course, they carry it, but they don't die from it, but they carry it. Well, it's lethal to humans about almost 50% of the time. If you get this, Your odds of surviving it very, very, very 50-50, even with perfect treatment. And seemingly, this is what she got, did not get help for it, and that's what she died from. Now, the thing about, as I've been reading about this, the thing about the hantavirus is that, at least initially, it feels just like the regular flu. Oh, I got a little cough. I got a little fever. Like I was talking about how I was sick for a few days a couple weeks ago. I got a little fever, got a little cough. My fever, I'm feeling a little hot, feeling like a little lethargic. At the beginning, it just seems like a 3-day flu or something. The problem is you have a hantavirus, which can kill you. And before maybe it really registers to you that, oh, this is really, really dangerous, it's too late. And it usually takes about 7 days without treatment for it to generally kill a human. And the thinking is that she knew she was sick with something, thought that she would get over it. She's out there going shopping and everything. Meanwhile, she has this virus that is eventually going to kill her, and she doesn't know it. And it very well may be that she didn't want to go get help because she's figuring, well, then what's Gene? I need to take care of Gene. And as we all know, I mean, what do we know about caretakers of one spouse taking care of a spouse or something like that? Usually the caretakers, what do? They don't take care of their own health. They're so caught up in taking care of this person who might have Alzheimer's, might have Parkinson's. They're so caught up in taking care of that person, they don't take care of themselves. This is my perception. No facts to back it up. This is my perception of what was probably going on here. She thought, oh, it's a flu. I'll get over it. I need to take care of Jane. And what happens? She kills over. Doesn't die necessarily right away, but, the fever knocks her out, and then she eventually dies. Well, Gene's still there. And because he has Alzheimer's, and it seems that he had gotten to the point, it's very sad. You see a lot of old interviews with Gene Hackman, very confident guy, very bubbly guy, kind of a man's man type of guy, you might say. And he played a lot of characters that were like that, of course, in The French Connection, No Way Out, The Unforgiven, so many great movies. And it's really hard to think that this guy you see on the screen got to the point where he couldn't take care of himself. But it happens. And it seems that he was alive for 6 more days in that house by himself while his wife was dead in the bathroom. And the belief is that because he could not take care of himself, not able to take his medications, maybe not able to feed himself, he eventually died in 6 days because he couldn't take care of himself. And so he's out in that mudroom. I don't know exactly what he was doing out there, but because he really didn't realize he couldn't call 911, nothing. So she dies. 6 days later, he dies. And so that whole time he's in that house, like I said, they believe that might not have even realized what was going on. Just the worst. I mean, you talk about like a nightmare scenario. I think we've all known people in our lives who, ended up losing their minds. They didn't know who, their kids were. And this happens. As humans continue to live longer and longer, these types of things are going to happen. And of course, unless you can find a cure for this. And I, of course, hope we find it tomorrow. But just imagine one of those people that you've known like that being in a house by himself or herself, just roaming around and not having any care or anything, not knowing when to take medication, not knowing how to clean themselves, not knowing how to feed themselves. Oh, baby. But that is how Gene Hackman died. Now, the only maybe good part about it is probably he didn't even, I mean, of course, Alzheimer's, dementia people, and I realize they're different or the same. Every time I bring this topic up, guaranteed I get a couple messages saying, well, the proper definition of this, I'm not a medical person. All right. This is not a medical show. We all know what I'm talking about here in generalities. The thing is that people with this condition can still feel pain. But maybe on the other hand, maybe it's good that he had lost his mind, because maybe he really then didn't realize what's going on. In contrast to somebody who, let's say, is paralyzed or, from the waist down or something, still can't take care of themselves, but they still have their minds. Their minds work totally fine, and their caretaker kills over in the bathroom, and they have no way to get to a phone, and then they're sitting there. It's all so bad. Getting old sucks. But what we can learn from this is, of course, we've had some missing people kind of in the same situation, David Hardy Jr. maybe, and you can think of some others, that we really, even though all of us have experienced at least one person in our life where, we've seen a person go downhill, vibrant, knowledgeable, smart, and then, they start to lose their, faculties, not necessarily mental illness, but their brains just don't work right anymore. We just have to realize how lost these people are. And realize that anything can happen at any time when it comes to these people. That they can't take care of themselves. Of course, many, Americans, if you're old enough to remember, of course, like President Reagan, vibrant guy, energetic guy, at least at the time was the oldest person to be elected president of the United States and everything else. And then, of course, he, got Alzheimer's. His wife, Nancy, took him out, the public eye. And, he lived for another 10 years. And he was very fortunate that Nancy stayed in pretty good health that whole time. And, of course, he could afford to have care. And you'd think Gene Hackman could too. And that's maybe something that needs to be examined here. If he was in this condition, why wasn't, he maybe getting professional help? Was it because he was a famous person and he had made a decision, I don't want anybody on the outside to see me like this? Possible. Your egos, your vanity. He only wanted his wife to see him like that. Because she was like a professional piano player or something. She had no medical degree or credentials or anything. But neither did Nancy Reagan. But, my impression, once again, is that she got a lot of medical help for all those years. But this is, unfortunately, this is how it's going to go for some people. And unless those people get killed in a car accident or something, some people are going to live long enough, that this is going to happen to them. Obviously, a lot of different issues, genetics and everything else play a huge role in this. For me personally, as I've talked about with my brothers and my sister, given, of course, their parents, my biological parents, both of my biological parents had their minds right up to the very end. My biological mother lived to be 88 and had her mind right up to the end. She died of cancer. She was 88 years old, still very, very sharp. And that's the way, of course, as you probably know, all of my siblings are in their 70s, well into their 70s now. All of them still very crisp. Mine's very, very crisp. My biological father, now he lived to be 78, could have lived longer if he took care of himself. Once again, he had his mind up to the very end. So probably that's the way it's going to go with me as well. that when if I hope to go another 30 years, but if I do, probably I'm going to have my mind to the end, which is nice to know. Maybe. I'm hoping I die just of a heart attack and, in seconds. Let's not draw this thing out. But for too many people, this is what's going to happen. And as I've talked about my own father, 88 years old, still drives pretty well, takes care of himself, still has his mind. Very fortunate. Most people, when they get to 88, are not like that. So we just have to really, when we think about disappearances, we really, really have to understand how incapable, how much help these types of people need, and how easily it can be that these people can go missing if they're not getting the proper care, if they're allowed to walk off and everything else. There is nothing in their minds that is going to put them back on the right track. My impression is once you start going down that path, and I realize there's a lot of experimental drugs and everything, but once you start going down your path, it takes its course, and you can live for a long time. If your body is healthy, you'll live for a long time, like Ronald Reagan did, 10 years with this. Other people with this don't last as long. So very sad, very sad. Let's see what's everybody. Yeah, of course, their dog died, and it very well may have died because it was in a crate and there was no food and water for it. Right. Yeah, it's a sad wave to go from them all. Yeah. He must have been so, Amy must have been so confused. Yeah, I know. And I guess for all of us, the odds are, there's how many people, odds are some of us, I don't mean to be the downer tonight, but odds are, looking at how many people are in here tonight, odds are some of us are going to have this happen to us. And I know if, we're thinking, well, how could I ever lose my mind? And how could I not realize what's going on? Yeah, that's probably what those people said at one time too. That's probably what Gene Hackman said maybe back in, 1996 or something. Probably what he was saying too. It's bad. Must be, yeah. Stephen, I read that he didn't have professional help because his wife was very protective of him, in particular about his care. His kids said she was very invested in caring for him herself. That was a bad choice. Bad choice, Stephanie. You may be right. I'm not saying that's a bad choice. For whatever reason, I realize that if you're a famous person, once again, like a president, like a well-known actor, Gene Hackman, probably one of the best, most well-known actors of all time, a fantastic body of work, 2 Academy Awards, and characters he played that will never be forgotten. They'll be, they're going to be on a highlight reels forever. You got to let the vanity go. You got to let the ego go, I think. I think you have to do that. So, I don't know. Me, I think that as far as, my dad and I have talked about this topic before. And he has things set up, insurance policies and things like that, all set up for him, things get to the point where he can't take care of himself and everything, because, I've told him in so many words, I'll be here for you and everything, but I have no medical experience and everything else. And, my attitude is, if you have the money and the insurance policy and everything else, leave it up to the professionals. That's my attitude. So I don't know. And I realize it very well may be for some of these famous people, they just want people to remember them as they were. Vibrant, interesting, articulate. And then they start noticing that they're going downhill and everything. I get it, but that's what happened. So not only, she was only in her 60s. And I think I think that maybe we can say if she's just a single woman in her 60s and gets the hantavirus, I'm thinking she goes to a hospital. But because she feels she has to take care of her husband and everything, she didn't. And she ends up dying first. So Charlotte's going to be a great grandma again. Everybody congratulate Charlotte. So there we go. Gene Hackman. Like I said, I think there's some things we can learn from that. And really understanding when we get to the next time we have an older person featured. We already had like Milda McQuillan and David Hardy Jr. And I didn't make a list of people for tonight, but we have to remember these types of things when we look at their disappearances. Moving on, the Wendy Guessing poll. Of course, we had a new episode this Friday. I think I fulfilled a promise that I had mentioned, I don't know, a year ago or a couple years ago, that I said I'd really like to cover Wendy's disappearance as a regular episode. Of course, it was an Unfound now, but there was something about it that caught my attention. And I'm thinking, well, one of these days I'd really like to make it. Of course, I hope she's found alive first. But if she isn't, I'd certainly like to feature her disappearance on the Friday podcast. And we got an opportunity to do that. The poll was what you thought happened to Wendy Guessing. Overwhelmingly, people think that she overdosed and and somebody covered it up. As I stated in the episode, that's a possibility, but I really believe we have to start looking at, is this really a thing? Is this really a thing? We talk about it. We hypothesize about it. Sometimes for many of us, it's the best theory that we can create that comes to mind. But statistically, we don't have a good handle on how common this is. We know that people overdose. We know that people die from drugs. We know that oftentimes people overdose and they aren't found, if they're in their home by themselves, or a condo or wherever else, that, maybe days or weeks before they're found, or maybe like Bo Man, who most likely got high, died, and was out there in that little courtyard for a year and a half. We have a lot of information on all of that. We have very, very little information on cover-ups of overdoses. We create these stories in our minds because it seems, well, we think that she overdosed. Well, why wasn't she found? Well, somebody must have carted her away, or him away, took him away, put him in a car, put him in the trunk, done something. The only problem is nobody's ever been, I'm not saying it's never happened, but we just don't have any noteworthy cases where people have been caught doing this. Whereas in Unfound's history of plenty of evidence of murderers hiding bodies, taking bodies places, burying them and everything. But when it comes to actual overdoses that are solved, look at the overdoses, disappearances that have been solved in Unfound's history. None of those people were dumped. None of those people were hid. Crystal Morrison, not hid. Noah Davis, not hid. Robbie Hurt, not hid. We have to start thinking about that. The disappearance of Wendy Guessing. I will admit I learned some things about her disappearance that I didn't know. For example, I didn't know until I started talking to Sarah that the car had been found and her phone had been found. But I think maybe something we might have missed out of the in the interview is that there was a key card, They don't use regular keys for hotel rooms anymore. It's like, the credit card, or even maybe it's even more high tech than that for really, really, really new places. But they were able to trace that key back to that Motel 6 and somebody in that room. And the guy said he had no idea about Wendy Guessing who she was or anything else. It's probably what we missed. I really don't know how much Sarah knows about that topic anyway. But it doesn't seem police were able to make a connection between whoever was in this room where this key was supposed to go and Wendy. I don't know. Moving on, let's get to these Unfound updates. I want to wait. Let me check something very quickly first, though. Just want to see if anybody posted any questions. Ask me any questions tonight. Let's see here. Just give me uno momento. Doesn't look like it. All right. Unfound updates. Well, I guess we were due. We got 3 of them, and they all are unfound nows. And maybe surprisingly, most recent Unfound Now is one of the updates. In fact, Amy has it right there. Belva, yeah. Belva Day went missing from Mountain Home, Arkansas, the beginning of February. And once again, being that we're just talking about Gene Hackman, Belva was also in her 90s, driving around, was supposed to go somewhere and seemingly just come directly home. She didn't do that. She kept driving here, driving there. She went the whole way down to Batesville, Arkansas, and she and her car were eventually found on the edge of an Air Force base in Little Rock. And the car had been wrecked. Belva deceased. And I think this is kind of what I'm talking about, is that when humans get to that particular age, it's one of those things. They drive from point A to point B just fine one day, but if they're asked to do that same drive the next day, they can't do it, and they can never do it again. It's no different, than anything else. Even if you're younger, if you're an athlete, for example, Novak Djokovic, kind of coming toward the end of his tennis career, that a year ago, he was able to recover, so quickly from a tennis tournament or from something. But now, even a year later, it's only a year, but now it takes a lot longer to recover. Or, injuries happen, more easily. Remember, Father Time eventually always wins. It's kind of, I think we should think about when it comes to older people and what they're able to do from day to day. And this is not a result that surprises me. I don't think I could have predicted that she and her car would be found in Little Rock next to an Air Force base. I was open to the idea that she might even be in a different state, but certainly this is what I envisioned, that she and her car were going to be found together, and that she would be deceased, and it would be some sort of accident, something like that. Don't know. I just don't know enough about Belva's background. Is this a situation where somebody should have taken the keys away from her years ago? Had she gone out and gotten lost before, going back to like the David Hardy Jr. example, where he had been out many times and his family continued to be afraid or something, or taking the keys, didn't want to tick him off, upset him, or whatever else. It very could be. I've not heard anything like that, but we know that it goes on. For all you people out there, this is why you got to do it. Unless you want your 80-some-year-old, 90-some-year-old parent to be driving around and, going missing and hurting themselves, or maybe hurting other people. And as I've talked about, As I think some of you know, a few years ago, because of something that went on with my dad, I had to take his keys away for a little while. It was ugly. It was ugly. It was bad. That was 3 years ago now. Seems like yesterday. It was bad. And I still think that somebody at the hospital screwed him over, because my dad has a way of, ticking people off. And I think he might have said something rude to somebody at the hospital. And so they decided to screw him over by putting this thing on his chart that he shouldn't drive anymore. He failed this test, so he shouldn't drive anymore, which is crazy. And eventually he went to a psychologist or somebody, checked his brain, checked his memory. He was fine and got his license back. But that time sucked. Some of you maybe remember that. So that's Belvedere. Very sad, but I think predictable. The next one is Thomas Irwin. This is a Unfound now. Was it from last year? Maybe in the year before. This is another older person, not as old as Belva, but he had been on some trip. He stopped at Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado, and eventually his car was found there. He was not. And I've been to Mesa Verde. That was going way back to like 1985. But you should know he just recently has also been found. And surprisingly or not, really not that far from where his car was parked. I think they said it was, I didn't write it down here, but I think 1,000 feet or something, fairly close to where his car was parked. He wasn't found miles and miles, like he went on some hike and couldn't get back in Mesa Verde. It wasn't anything like that. He was found fairly close to his vehicle, which doesn't surprise me at all. And so this is another one, and he was found by accident. There weren't any searches going on for Thomas, but he was found. I'm not sure how he died. Could it have been a heart attack or something? Very easy to believe. I don't think this was, there's nothing that I've read in any news report believing this was suicide. So I think we have to think this is some sort of medical event that took his life, whether a stroke, heart attack, brain aneurysm, something like that. But once again, person found fairly close to their car and remains missing, for longer than you think the person should. And for all the David Paulides people out there, no, Thomas not murdered in a national park. This then leads me to this one, which I think of these three was the one that had the most question marks. Certainly odd circumstances, kinda. And big question marks as to where this guy could have gone given the situation. And that is Tyler Goodrich. He, if you remember, he was married to his husband, and they were having, seems, some relationship issues, maybe even talked about getting divorced, something like that. And Tyler had done some, I think they had children that they adopted that were in the house. And allegedly, Tyler had done something to his husband. They got, I don't think it was an all-out brawl or anything, punches being thrown. But Tyler, in some way, assaulted his partner. And the partner called 911. I don't have all the details written out here on my other screen, but I think this might not have been the first time that this happened. But they had been talking about splitting up and everything. And after the other guy called 911, Tyler ran off. And if you remember, maybe some of you remember, they had some sort of video camera, security camera on the outside of the house. Tyler, you can see Tyler running off into the night. It was nighttime, and you see him take off. I think it was like out the back door of the house. He took off. Police show up. He's not there. They go looking for him. He's not found. Well, he was found. And just like I think with Thomas Irwin, Tyler Goodrich's body was found within 1,000 yards from his house. Now was it 1,000 feet or 1,000 yards? Even if it's 1,000 yards, that's less than a mile. That's 3,000 feet. That's just over a half mile. That's not very far. Not far at all. But he took off, and his remains were found. Let's see what it says here. Oh, I did print out this article. I'll read some of it to you. How about that? Authorities are investigating after human remains were discovered Saturday morning near Highway 77 and West Pioneers Boulevard, less than 1,000 yards from the home of Tyler Goodrich, a 35-year-old man who has been missing since November of 2023. Chief Deputy Ben Houchin of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office said a person walking their dog found the man's body, which appeared to have been there for a while. Authorities were contacted approximately 9:42 a.m. Houchin added that the body was in a wooded area and appeared to have been there for over a year. Based off details at the scene, including the location and proximity to Tyler Goodrich's last known location, investigators have been in contact with Mr. Goodrich's family. Officials are treating the death as suspicious, but not as a homicide. We're not identifying 100% who the individual is. We still have investigating and the autopsy to go. An autopsy is scheduled for Monday morning, so today. The sheriff's office plans to provide any new details on the investigation during its regular Monday press briefing at 9:30 a.m., which will be carried live on 1011now.com. I don't know what went on there this morning. According to the sheriff's office, the area where the body was found was previously searched for Tyler Goodrich. It had been searched and marked off on the GIS map created by Lincoln Parks and Rec. So once again, we have a situation where searches were done and the missing person was found in the search area a year later, or 10 years later, 20 years later. Why does this happen? Well, first, let's get to the disappearance itself. This is not, maybe for some of you, this is once again a result that does not surprise me. I realize that some people might be thinking, well, he ran off and people might be hiding him, being that they, think, well, he might go to jail. The police are going to show up, it might be assault. He might get taken to jail. So he ran off and, friends or family are hiding him because they know he doesn't deserve to go to jail. And what I would say to that is, I think if that's your impression, like, for a little while, if that's something you're thinking after a situation such as this, I'm not going to get too crazy about that. But as you also know, when I end up doing these Unfound Nows, usually they're about a month old. Like Belveday's disappearance was not quite a month old. Some of them have been maybe a couple months old, a month and a half. It's usually averages about a month and a half to 2 months old when I get to them for Unfound Now. So I'm guessing this is about the way it was with Tyler's disappearance. So I'm looking at this disappearance and it's a month in. You start getting to a month and a person is missing. The odds that person is being hidden by friends and family from the law and everything, it's so unlikely. Now, if we were talking about a gang member or something like that, and this person had murdered somebody and there's other people, hide the person, get them out of town, then that's a little bit different. This is why disappearances are about people, not about circumstances. But you start looking at Tyler Goodrich, this just could never be. Like I said, if you're going to think this in like the first 3 or 4 or 5 days, okay. You get to a month, a disappearance like a month old or something. It just is so, so, so unlikely. So then we have to start thinking about, well, did he run off and starting a new life somewhere? That sounds unlikely as well, given the quickness that this all happened. This all happened like in seconds. They get into a fight. He allegedly assaults his partner. The partner calls 911, and then Tyler takes off. This doesn't sound like a recipe for somebody who is going to run off and go to a different city and come up with a new name and everything else. Just doesn't seem likely. So then what are we left with? Well, did he come back to the house later and his husband murdered him and hit? I guess theoretically that's still a possibility, given what we know at this point on March 10th of 2025. But once again, this sounds unlikely to me. And so we're left kind of with what I thought originally. Well, he ran off and he died somehow. And I realize a lot of people maybe in the public question, well, how can you just say that somebody runs off and they die? I mean, this guy's 35 years old. He doesn't have any medical problems and everything. How can you think that? And I said, well, pretty easily. And what I'm looking at, and I think I might, although I didn't go back and listen to the original Unfound now or watch it, is that I'm guessing I probably brought up, well, it was November, and it wasn't November in, this is Nebraska in November, cold, already getting snow. Snow's a possibility, I think, in Lincoln, Nebraska in November. This isn't November in Florida. This isn't November in Southern California. This isn't November in Las Vegas, where it still can maybe be at least a little bit warm. This isn't November in Hawaii. This is November in Nebraska. And this guy took off. I think he might have even been in his bare feet. He took off in shorts and a t-shirt. And I realized, well, it doesn't take that long to have the cold overwhelm you. We as humans, we are not built for the elements. The reason that we've been able to, dominate animals on this earth is because of our minds, not because of our bodies. We're slow. We don't have any fur. Our teeth are meant for chewing, not for killing, on and on and on. Well, the reason we've gotten to our point in the hierarchy of animals on the earth is because of our minds, not because of our bodies. And we're not built for going out in shirts and t-shirts in November in Lincoln, Nebraska. And so my guess, it very well may be committed suicide. He's feeling really bad about this and somehow found a way to kill himself out there. Did he take any weapons with him? Did he take a knife with him? Did he take a gun with him? I don't know. But I'm guessing this is going to be the elements. He went out there, and as I think I said at the time, he probably knew the police were coming. He's going to hide somewhere and wait till they leave and everything and then go back. Well, what he underestimated is how cold it is. And we have to remember that if you go out in the cold, the quickest way humans lose body heat, through your head and through your feet. Through your head and through your feet. This is why generally if you go out somewhere, as long as you have a hat on and your feet don't get cold, the rest of you probably will be okay. On the other hand, if you go out in cold weather and you have a jacket on, you have pants, but you're in bare feet and you don't wear a hat, you're going to get colder a lot faster that way. If you're walking on cold ground and everything else, I'm going to guess this is what happened to him. I think he probably died of hypothermia. But so once again, I realized that this one compared to those other two, to Thomas Irwin, Belvedere, a lot more question marks, a little bit of an odd circumstance. When we start looking at the person, or a 35-year-old guy, what's the worst that can happen? Whereas Belvedere, 90-something. Thomas Irwin in his 70s going into a national park by himself. Those do sound like those could be problems. Whereas with Tyler Goodrich, 35, what's going on here. I think that I even remember saying, that he was into running or something. Well, maybe he overestimated his ability to withstand the elements. But once again, I'm not surprised that he was found close and that he was found. I haven't said anything about any body injuries. Now, maybe took a knife with him, killing himself. If I read that, I hear about that, I'll tell all of you. But that's not in the news yet. So, my job, of course, I'm the host here. I'm the resident expert. I like to get things correct. I labored to get them correct. I want to get them correct. And of course, I think that I'm more than transparent when I get, predictions on disappearances wrong. But I use all of these disappearances and these predictions as a way to gauge, am I getting any better at this? Am I learning anything? And I think I am. I think that I got all 3 of these disappearances correct. So I'm happy about that. I'm not happy these people are just dead. I of course wish maybe I was wrong, that they were all alive and they were found alive and brought back to their families and everything. But I think in all 3 of these disappearances, I think it was pretty clear that these 3 were no longer with us. Even though the circumstances are completely different, 3 different people, 3 different areas of the United States, on and on and on, it was fairly clear to me that they would not be found alive. So I hope that, especially for Tyler Goodrich, that they do give a cause of death. As far as him being an area that was searched, once again, this is not, if you've been listening to Unfound for maybe not a month, but maybe a couple years, or watching this live show for a couple years, you should know this is not surprising. Nobody at this point who listens to this podcast or watches this live show should be surprised that missing people are found in areas that were previously searched. Nobody should be surprised by that. So, and I guess what we're also saying is that this disappearance could have been resolved a long time ago. Remember, this is November 2023. I guess it could have been resolved in December of 2023. Now, you may ask me, well, what is going on? If they searched this area and he wasn't seen, how is it that, a search team can be out there, not find it, but some person randomly walking a dog can find him? I've been through this before. Don't really want to get into it again tonight, but we have to question the motivation of the people that are out there. Of course, it's winter. Did they really put 100% effort into it? I think attitude has a lot to do with it. If you are a person who's out there searching and the circumstances, and you're thinking, well, surely Tyler's not out here. I mean, surely he's being hid by somebody, or surely he ran off. He would be farther away than 1,000 yards from his home. Surely, I mean, what are we even doing here? That affects how well you're going to do your job in your small part of the search. Because once again, I think the perception is, well, somebody runs off. Surely that person is going to be farther away. Yes, the person may be dead, but surely that person's going to be farther away than 1,000 yards, which is 3,000 feet, which is like, 60% of a mile. Surely, no. We see over and over again, most people are found very close to their homes, very close to their cars, very close to their condos, very close to their places of work. This is how it works. Whereas I think the public perception is, all these people are going to be miles away. So what am I doing standing here searching 1,000 yards from Tyler Goodrich's home? Attitude matters. So I'm guessing that's why. So people thought, well, he's surely not going to be here. So they just didn't look that close. I MT, hi Ed. Sounds like suicide is being considered in Tyler's case, at least by authorities, not his family. Local gossip said he was found in a tree. Well, maybe climbed into the tree because they knew people were going to be searching for him. Did he have a rope? Did he hang himself? Did he climb up into that tree and jump and land on his? I guess you could commit suicide that way. Climb up into a high tree and jump and make sure you land on your head. It sounds gruesome. I mean, I guess this is the gruesome show tonight, being that we talked about Gene Hackman and everything. But they're considering it, and that I'm guessing they're considering a few different things. Like I said, I'll try to keep up on it. Where do I want to go next? Very quickly, did you see that Adnan Syed, of course, the guy from Serial fame, is, at least for now, considering he is, with time served, he's out of jail. They've decided that he has spent enough time in jail for now, but I think this is going to get appealed again, so he's out. I continue to believe that Adnan Syed is the murderer of Heyman Lee. Even though I've never listened to Serial, I certainly have read enough about the circumstances and everything that's gone on, and there's really not even much doubt in my mind that he did it. Not much doubt at all. So, but he's out. He's out. He is a free man. Like I said, I don't know if that's going to be permanent because there's still a lot of legal wrangling going on. But right now, he's out. Moving on. Remember some months ago, this would have been before, once again, not to get into politics, but if you remember going back to like October of 2024, before this past election, that there was a lot of talk that the Menendez brothers might get out of jail for time served. And it might be on the basis that they were abused and, extenuating circumstances and all this other stuff. And the person who is the main DA was considering, letting them out of jail. However, the problem, of course, they had elections in California like they had everywhere else. And that particular DA or prosecutor, district attorney for LA lost. And so the new person who is in that position, it sounds to me, is not open to the idea of the Menendez brothers getting out, taking a different attitude. And I realized when I brought this up back in October, I have to admit I was a little surprised by how many people in the chat were sympathetic to the idea of them getting out of jail. I can tell you, I'm not sympathetic to that argument at all. I will admit it might be a little different if after they killed their parents that they just owned up to it. All right, we did it. We lost our minds. They had abused us. We shouldn't have done it. It was it was the heat of the moment, or whatever they would say, even if some of it wouldn't be true. But that's not what they did. They did everything in their power to get out of it. No showing of remorse. No thinking back on what they did and saying, you know what, that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. And we also have to remember, unfortunately, there are a lot of kids who have been abused by their parents. Most abused kids don't kill their parents. The Menendez brothers did not have to do this. It was not self-defense or anything. They were grown men, and they could have easily overpowered their parents in seconds, like I guess they did. But if they thought that, their father was going to come after them, they could have easily overpowered him in seconds. and defended themselves and everything. And it wasn't even that. They just outright planned to kill him and did it. They should be in jail forever. I would never trust people like that. Men or women, just can't. Just cannot do that. Too impulsive, too sinister. It's, I don't know. Like I said, I realize that we've come a long way when it comes to the psychology of people who kill and people who have been abused and all of that. And certainly there have been miscarriages of justice regarding that maybe some consideration should have been given for some people who have gone up and killed their abusers. Certainly. This is surely not one of those cases. Surely not. In contrast to if, what if the Menendez brothers were 10? And they were certainly getting abused by their parents, and the 10-year-old Menendez brothers killed their parents. Different. Certainly there should be some, I don't know what you can do at a 10-year-old, but certainly there should be some penalties and things. But in jail for their lives, that seems overtly harsh if they were 10. But at the ages these guys were adults, these two guys could have done anything with their lives. They could have been productive members of their society. They could have moved away. They could have done this. They chose to kill their parents. No sympathy at all. Joanne says, I saw they said he was found in a tree. So said, yeah, that's what, thank you, Joanne. That is what MT said as well. Thank you. And Sarah says they need to remain incarcerated. I agree. They are a threat to society. Of course, there are women out there. I think one of the Menendez brothers got married while he was in jail. I don't get any of that. Brian. Hello, Brian. What's going on, Brian? Good to see you tonight. I don't think I've seen your name in the chat till now. Hi, Ed. Saw the crime scene. These parents were sitting on the couch and were shot with shotgun. No threat to them at all. Parents were ambushed. They were. I've seen those pictures too. Yeah. Absolutely. It's one of those things. 54 years old. I think I'm a fairly reasonable person. These people who think that those two need to be let out of jail. Wow. That's all I could say. I love all of you. I thank you all for listening to Unfound and everything else. But if you're in this crowd and you're thinking that the Menendez brothers should be out of jail. Wow. Okay. Moving on. You just got here. Oh, okay, Brian. Well, I hope you will go back and listen to the first hour and a half of the show. It's been a good one tonight. Thanks for making some time, though, for these last few minutes. Maybe one more thing. Did you see the story about the Martin family? This was a big mystery in Oregon, 66 years that this family went missing. I guess they went missing around Christmas. I would admit that I had not heard about their case before. I probably read it, but it just didn't maybe stick up here. But they seemingly have been found in a river, and the station wagon thought to belong to Ken and Barbara Martin was found last fall by Archer Mayo. What a name. A diver who had been looking for it for 7 years said Mayo has a representative. That's interesting. Costello. Mayo pinpointed the likely location, dove several times before finding the car upside down, about 50 feet deep, covered in mud, salmon guts, silt, and mussel shells. Costello said, "This is a very big development in a case that's been on the back of Portland's mind for 60 years. Mayo found other cars nearby. Hughes, the Hood River County Sheriff's deputy, said one car had been previously identified and the second was an unknown Volkswagen. So it seems the Martin's car has been found, but what I also read here, no human remains were found in the vehicle, which was pulled out of the water on Friday afternoon, so just a few days ago, in a process that took about 10 minutes. The vehicle's body, which was visible in video shot by divers, came off during the lifting, and only the frame and wheels came out of the water. That's totally understandable given the rust and everything. The car will be wrapped and sent to a warehouse, where a forensics team will try to learn more about its owners, but officials felt certain they found the car they were looking for. Everything matches. It appears to be the color, make, and model of the Martin vehicle. So I guess, as we often have to think in these circumstances, that this family was out there, somehow got off the road and went into the water. Why they aren't in the car, I don't know if I'm surprised by that or not. It's been 66 years, and if it's in a river, you got the current, and if the bodies start to deteriorate and everything, the car starts to rust, and maybe one of them got a window open before they all died or something. Maybe we can throw around some certain theories here and there, but it does say the body. Well, it does say here the bodies of two of the family's children were found in the river later that year. The remembering members. So, in 1959, I guess, two of the children were found in the river. It was just a question of where the other people were and the car were. That's interesting to me. So, even though they found two of the children in that river, they still were never able to find the car. Okay. Interesting. So those are the Martins. This is the disappearance from 1959. Good work by Archer Mayo for following through on this, having a plan, executing that plan. It does say here the Martins took their daughters Barbara, Virginia, and Sue on a ride to the mountains on December 7th, 1958 to collect Christmas greenery. The children left the Sunday newspaper comics scattered about their home. Dishes remained in the sink and a load of laundry in the washing machine. They never returned. Officials narrowed their search for the family after learning that Ken Martin had used a credit card to buy gas at a station near Cascade Locks. And police have speculated that Martin's red and white station wagon might have plunged into an isolated canyon or river. The credit card purchase was the only thing to pinpoint the family's movements. So there you go. And that's why you never give up hope. I try to tell that to guests. I realize things seem pretty bleak, but my perception is all the disappearances that have been resolved and Unfound is covered. It seems like all of them were a surprise. I don't know if we didn't see it coming months in advance or something. Zoe Campos and Esther Westenbarger, all of these. It seems like it's like nothing one day and then everything happens the next day. So you never know when something good can happen. If you consider it good that you're going to find out that your loved one is dead. You never know when something positive that you can get the answers that you're looking for can happen anytime, even 60 some years later. All right, let's go to this Friday. This is a disappearance that you will not find on the Charlie Project. You will not find it on NamUs. It is the disappearance of Nancy Sue Braddock. She also went by the last name Rhodes, Rhodes. She went missing sometime in September of 1980, so over 44 years ago. And we're just not quite sure where she went missing from. You'll hear about this on Friday. This will all be very clear on Friday. Did she go missing from Birmingham, Alabama, or did she go missing from Panama City, Florida, or did she go missing from right here in Tampa, Florida? Very hard to tell. And her daughter, Lauren, is the guest. And Lauren, I think, was about 13, 14 years old when this happened. So what we're going to be challenged with is She was supposed to meet with her daughter, Lauren, and then she sent her daughter, Lauren, a telegram saying, I can't get together with you. And Lauren was up in Nashville. I can't get together with you. I'm sick. I'm in the hospital. That's the last she ever heard from her mother. And eventually I figured out she's missing. And it very well could be that Nancy Sue somehow made it down to Tampa, because sometime later, Lauren got a call from a woman here in the Tampa area who said that a woman who called herself Sue Williams was her roommate. And then this woman says, yes, Sue was here, and then she wasn't. Wonder where she went. So I tried to track her down with the phone records, and I found your number on the records, and that's why I'm calling. You will have to figure out all of that for yourselves on Friday. Like I said, this is not a disappearance. I think you may find some things on Facebook, but Nancy Sue is not on the Charlie Project. She is not on NamUs. And you know how much I like bringing these kinds of disappearances to all of you, shedding some light on a disappearance that has had no light before. So that's all I got. Sarah's leaving. Night all. See you, Sarah. And I'm going to be getting out of here as well. I told you it'd be an action-packed show tonight. Went right up to the limit here. Even had a couple things that I didn't get to tonight. That's fine. I got to I got to what's in the headlines, which is always most important to me. So that's all I got. Hope all of you take care of yourselves. I hope all of you sleep great tonight. And you will hear me on Friday. I edited the interview with Lauren today. She did a fantastic job. Going to be doing the interview for next Friday's episode on Wednesday night after trivia. And I'll tell you about that next week, of course. But that's all I got for you. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. Everybody, keep your heads on swivels out there. Do not allow yourselves to become victims. Good night.